Before we even started recording, this article kind of popped in about an hour ago from ESPN. And it's not really an update, but it is kind of interesting. There's so much happening with college football in terms of the expansion of the playoffs, NIL, different teams looking to go into different conferences, and especially with TV deals coming up, you're going to see some big money deals going around, especially for the SEC and some of the bigger Power 5 conferences. And so the College Football Committee, they had their meeting, still undecided on an expansion date to expand the playoff, still hopeful for 2024. The plan is to expand to 12 teams. When that will be, we don't know. So I want to ask you, before we even get into what's going on in this season of college football, do you like the expansion of the college football playoff? Are you one of those guys that wants to see 12 teams in the playoff, or do you think the current format of 4 teams in the playoff is good enough?
No, I'd absolutely love to see an expansion, because when you get down to it, the arguments every year are how many SEC teams are going to be in it. And it kind of comes down to, you start seeing the same 4 teams. Usually you've always got one of Alabama, Georgia, kind of mixing into that. And then even lately now, you've got teams like Tennessee. Ole Miss is in the top 10 as well right now. So there's a good amount of SEC teams that always kind of take over these rankings. And it's like, okay, if you can expand this to 12 teams, if you go and look at the top 25 right now, in the top 12, there's already 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 one-loss teams, and a lot of these teams are going to play each other again. There's some big games remaining in the college football schedule, including this weekend and next weekend and the following weekend. Then you've got championship weekend. So there's a lot that goes on where you're going to have some 1 and 2 loss teams. When you look at Alabama, Tennessee, for example, last weekend, like, that's a huge game, because it came down to a missed field goal by Alabama, then turns into a field goal win for Tennessee. Well, that just it causes more pressure for Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide, because they have a very tough schedule coming up, and they still have to play a couple games against they have Auburn in the Iron Bowl towards the end of the year, and I believe they have a game against Ole Miss that they got to watch out for. I have to bring up their schedule to double check that. But there's so many teams that are good. But the big thing is just seeing these different teams kind of come into it. The TCUs, the UCLAs, incorporating some of the Pac-12. Oregon is sitting there. Oklahoma State, USC is finally relevant again. Wake Forest is sitting there at 5-1. Syracuse, there's a big ACC matchup this week between Syracuse and Clemson. Those are 2 teams right there that are, you'd like to see just some different team and expand your college football fandom and just give the crowd and more people. So I'm all in favor of 12, because you can then give a buys to a couple, then you like the first 4, then you have 8 teams play against each other. I love that idea of it, giving the top 4 kind of a bye week into it. So I'm all about it. How do you like it?
Yeah, I'm all for an expansion. I think the current format is much better than the BCS sort of format we saw for many years, where it's led to ties at number 1, and we've had some good stuff. I mean, I think back to the 2006 Rose Bowl with USC and Texas. But otherwise, I think this current format is better than the old one. But I think if you expand the field, I think for the longest time, I think a lot of people would say, well, you got these other teams, but it's clearly number 1 and 2 are these teams. But, with the way that football really has been expanding, you're getting a lot more talented players coming through the college system right now. And so a lot of other teams are becoming a lot better. And so you're seeing guys that used to be obviously Alabama or your Georgias, as you mentioned, Ohio States. They're just like the dominant powerhouse colleges that you're always going to see. But now, obviously, also with the implementation of NIL, you're seeing a lot more diverse colleges with some more skilled players. And we're starting to see that with Tennessee as well, kind of going ahead of schedule in terms of their development as a team. But nonetheless, I do like a college football expansion, get some 12 teams in there. I just find it funny. There's so much pushback on it when, I just look at college basketball and the March Madness, and like, it's just this giant tournament where 128 teams or whatever are involved. Like, I don't understand why 12 teams all of a sudden, for some people freak out about that when you get like a college basketball that has all these teams involved and you get your occasional upsets. So I'm all for an expansion, hopefully sooner rather than later. That way we don't have teams that get left out. But yeah, I'm all for expansion.